All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jeff Waldstreicher. On behalf of Chairman Will Smith, I welcome you to the Judicial Proceedings Committee. I want to begin by acknowledging and recognizing the family of Agent Davis Martinez. Agent Martinez was a constituent of mine in Silver Spring, where I grew up, and was murdered inside my legislative district. And so to Agent Martinez's mother, his girlfriend, who are here with us, you have our condolences. Our prayers are with you, and we will continue to be a resource for you in any way that we can. Agent Martinez was a 6-year veteran and a hero in our community, and his loss is still being felt. And the reason we're gathered here today is both to talk about what happened in the circumstances of Agent Martinez's murder, but also to make sure that this never happens to any of our public servants or heroes in our community. And with that, I want to introduce Chairman Barnes, who will take it from here.
Chairman, obviously this is a really sobering meeting and serious subject matter. The House echoes our condolences for Agent Martinez and his family, her family. You know, we look forward to sort of getting to the bottom of, you know, how this happened and how, most importantly, how we can avoid anything like this in the future. I think that's the really impetus of this meeting here today, is to sort of see what Department of Parole and Probation has done, what steps they've taken. We also want to hear from the union, the workers who will, I'm sure, have many ideas as to how we can avoid this kind of tragedy moving forward. So I know we have a busy agenda. Look forward to getting started.
And before we begin, I want to give a chance for Chairman Clippinger to say, okay. All right, then let's go ahead with today's hearing. And Secretary Scruggs, you're welcome to join us at the lectern and make any remarks.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. First, I want to thank you for the invitation for DPSCS to come before you to conduct this briefing and to talk with you about safety measures that we have put in place as it comes and involves our agents and our staff. For the record, my name is Carolyn J. Scruggs. I'm the Secretary of the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. I want to introduce to you the new DPP leadership that I've brought along with me today. We have Ms. Yolanda Bethia. She is the acting director for the Division of Parole and Probation. It is hoped that with many of your blessings, she will get confirmed during next session. Ms. Bethia. We also have Ms. Shanae Kaskin-Thompson, who is the Deputy Director for Administration for DPP, and Mr. Christopher King, who is the Deputy Director for Operations for DPP. The death of Agent Martinez in line of duty was felt by all of us. We still feel it today. We are here today to share with you some of the steps that this administration has taken to ensure that DPP agents in the field are safe. First, I'd like to take some time to discuss the investigation that was conducted by this department's Intel Investigation Division. I would like to acknowledge that with review from the Attorney General, a redacted copy of that investigation was shared with our ASME leadership. I would also like to acknowledge that it is an ongoing criminal investigation, so there may be matters in which we cannot convey information to you. While the investigation determined there was no policy violation, it became clear that the mindset surrounding the supervision practices within DPP needed to be strengthened. Our public safety mission must remain forefront, and that is the life safety of our staff. New leadership teams were placed and focused on conveying that message, and that matter and that concern was done swiftly and decisively. During the investigation, it was discovered there were concerns by agents about Mr. Sewell, and those concerns were not addressed by DPP leadership, nor were they addressed by immediate supervisors. Reporting compliance began to change, as well as attitudes regarding supervision and authority. As a result, DPP executive leadership was removed and immediate action was taken to reassess and enhance current policies and procedures. Despite this adversity, the department's parole and probation agents continued to do their tremendous work, consistently supervising cases, making timely assessments, and continuing referrals and communications through the Parole Commission. The new DPP leadership identified opportunities for enhancement to increase efficiency and compliance. Some of these include creating alert flags within the case database to communicate when supervised individuals had a prior history of assault. We actually, if you're not familiar with our offender case management system that is used to track all of our offenders and those that are on supervision, it now has a mechanism that comes straight up in the header if there is an alert, if you need to know that that person has an enemy, if you need to know that person is attached to a strategic threat group, if that person has assaulted one of the DPS staff before, you can actually see that alert and note so that you know how to handle it accordingly. We also improved case staffing between supervisors, agents, and social workers prior to transfer. We started multidisciplinary teams for review, for transfer, instead of just a conversation between the agent that was already assigned and the supervisor. That way everyone had insight into the management of that community supervisee and knew what they were walking into. Case staffing between transferring and receiving agent. We found that when an individual was being transferred to another agent, oftentimes there was no communication or talking between the two of those. So we actually implemented that so that firsthand experiences could be gained. We also expanded our continuum of force response options. We began training on confrontational avoidance and defense tactics, which I'll go into a little later. And we developed a stress call communication system that is separate from our alert system that has worked very well. It goes directly to our Intel and Investigation Division. It is monitored 24/7, and it allows not only us to contact local law enforcement, but the local law enforcement that we have within our department are able to engage quickly and expeditiously to help resolve whatever matter is going on. The new DPP leadership and I are committed to rebuilding staff trust by changing our community supervision options and enhancing communication. Under my direction, they've been working continuously on developing measures to improve conditions and provide added protections for the increased safety of all staff. The Division of Parole and Probation supervises individuals in the community who have been on parole, probation, or mandatory release. If you look at the slide in front of you, there are currently 43,381 individuals under active community supervision for criminal or serious traffic cases. Most of these cases are court sentenced to the community either before or after conviction. As the slide indicates, only 7.1% of these cases are supervised in the community at the department's discretion. We are equally committed to continuing our efforts to improve working conditions and address ongoing staffing concerns within and outside of our department. DPP currently has a 7.42% vacancy rate. Agent hiring has been prioritized for offices in the Capital, the East, and the West regions. We are also prioritizing the filling of administrative staff as well as drinking and driving monitor program agents. DPP currently has 40 vacant vacancies and 12 administrative staff vacancies. In order to ensure all are filled quickly, the Agent 1 position was moved to open and continuous on the DBM website. Today, 40 potential agent hires are in background investigation as we speak. 25 will graduate on November 7th. These also include 3 additional social workers. And in February of 2025, we plan to start the next DPP Academy. DPP took swift and immediate action to ensure staff safety with the creation of a shared intelligence account. The partnership between DPP and the department's Intel and Investigative Division allows immediate threats to staff and safety concerns related to the supervised population to be shared within the field. The goal of the account is to get ahead of safety concerns and ensure a quick response to incidents by the department's intelligence and law enforcement experts. It has been used and it has resolved safety threats for agents and officers. I will tell you that it was used in our Hagerstown office, and I recently went to that office and was able to commend all of the staff there for their use of it, and they expeditiously made sure that a potential threat that came in was averted because of that use of that system. With a phased approach to safety responses, DPP focuses on strategies involving clear communication and collaboration with staff, and the implementation of security, field, and legal support initiatives. Home visit think tank meetings were held across the state to solicit employee input in moving forward with home visits in a safe and secure manner. Proposed solutions raised by field staff included the need for state vehicle upgrades, additional training and safety equipment, joint home visits, as well as arming agents. Additionally, departmental and DPP leadership met with union leaders the first week of June, in which they shared their concerns regarding home visits, vests, and pepper spray. My labor relations team has been working tirelessly to ensure that safety concerns are being discussed within the union and addressed more collaboratively and timely. With personal security at the forefront, an inventory of personal protective equipment was identified, and the need for expanded security equipment. We actually went back to the state contract. We actually procured so that 400 vests could be put back out into the field. We identified everyone that had an expired vest or did not have a vest or needed to be refitted for a vest. And all of them have been given that option to get refitted and get a new vest. The other thing that we put in place is that now you get fitted for your vest while you're at the academy, because it takes up to 6 weeks for the manufacturer to actually get this vest to us. So we're going to start early, so by the time you complete the academy, you will have that vest. Agents without ballistic vests have been scheduled for fitting, and many of them have already had their fittings. We identified the need for more effective OC spray and are working with a new vendor to expedite this equipment's deployment. What we found was that the OC spray that they were using was not of the same grade OC spray that I'm familiar with that we use on the correctional side and that law enforcement uses. It was more equivalent to what you as a layman or a citizen would have been able to purchase. We have put in an order for the OC spray. It is on back order by our vendor, and because it is taking some time, my DPP leadership has reached out to other vendors to see if they can give us an initial supply while we wait for that OC spray so that we can deploy it. While home visits were paused, we directed focus towards improving safety at field offices to create a secure environment for agents to conduct in-person contacts. The DPP Warrant Apprehension Unit assisted DPP with conducting security site visits at all field offices. Armed security was provided at offices not located in courthouses. I do want to share with you that there are 2 DPP sites. I believe it's the Eastern site and Mount Hope, where the landlords do not want to allow us to have armed security, but we are working with DGS, who oversees that building contract, to see if we can resolve that matter. The department has partnered also with Baltimore City Police Department, one of our largest law enforcement partners, to develop an interagency agreement to establish law enforcement assisted home visits and redesign secure district reporting options for agents. In addition, DPP has met with Howard County Police and all municipal law enforcement agencies within Prince George's County to communicate joint home visits. Outreach to other law enforcement agencies continue in an effort to foster a joint home visit relationship for our agents. It would behoove me if I didn't stop and commend this leadership and the prior acting director that was here before Ms. Bethia came, that actually works as part of our intel and investigative unit, but started her career with DPP. Because when they realized indeed that we did have to, by mandate, do home visits for our absconders, they took it upon themselves to go out, and they completed those home visits, and they provided that information back to the agent. They went out with law enforcement and got that completed so that our mandate remained in compliance. DPP has also teamed up with the judiciary to include as a standard condition of probation that an individual under supervision may not physically harm, verbally threaten, or intimidate an employee of the department. This is another example of DPP's proven commitment to ensuring the safety of its agents and staff. The condition has been presented to the District and Circuit Court Forum Committee. Once imposed, violations will be reported directly to the court, ensuring swift action and safety for our staff. The focus continues with the emphasis on training, field work, protocols, and policy development. Under my direction, DPP leadership focused on a measured approach for re-implementation of field work. Of the leading suggestions heard from staff throughout the home visit think tanks was the need to develop increased practical training related to field work and defense tactics. Working alongside the Correctional Training Commission, the Warrant Apprehension Unit developed situational awareness training in conjunction with defense tactics refreshers. Between August and September, 4 sessions were held, with 4 more scheduled by the end of the year. This training was designed to support agents who would be electing to conduct home visits alongside local law enforcement. The department has also developed a full 40-hour safety training curriculum together with the Correctional Training Commission. Beginning this December, the new course for agents will include classes of recognizing behavioral health conditions, field and agent safety, defense tactics, use of force, and equipment use. Prior to this, there was a 18-hour webinar that they were doing. I am very familiar because of my criminal correctional history, having in-service and 40 hours that is mandated. So effective January 2020, the 40-hour training will be mandatory for all DPP agents, a significant improvement over that 18-hour requirement. DPP continues its commitment to implementing evidence-based practices in the field of community supervision. The American Parole and Probation Association issues its first national standards and community supervision in June. This is expected to actually be adopted nationwide in 2025, and we are watching this aggressively so that we can not only learn from it, but to also make sure that we can adopt some of those conditions and standards that they present. These standards are meant to promote more positive community supervision outcomes for both individuals under supervision and the agencies that supervise them. DPP will use these standards to evaluate and strengthen our services and practices and to continue to improve public safety. Validated risk assessments are utilized to evaluate the level of an individual's risk to reoffend. DPP continues to ensure the assessment tools are revalidated to make sure they measure what they are designed to measure. A survey was conducted through the Correctional Leadership Association to learn what policies and practices other states have implemented related to field work and home visits. Out of the 15 states that replied, 72% allow agents to conduct home visits without a partner, and like Maryland, 74% of states have agents who do not act as a sworn peace officer with arrest powers. A fieldwork study group was established here in Maryland for the purpose of allowing agents to discuss cases with supervisors prior to going out to the field. This provides for more insight into the offender. So, where do we go from here? DPP will continue to examine risk and needs assessment tools for effective and accurate communication and ability to predict violent reoffenses. An interdisciplinary supervision approach will be examined, including the effective practices and community supervision model that teaches probation and parole officers how to use core practices and effective intervention practices in their work. As we think about possible considerations, my team will begin to examine equipment and techniques to use in the course of their duties. These include, but are not limited to, batons, stun guns, body-worn cameras, and firearms. Agents are guided by the principle of using only the amount of force necessary to protect themselves and others. The decision to use weapons will be based on actual need and agent safety. In conclusion, I just would like to say that I am confident that the new leadership at DPP will ensure the continued efforts to make sure that the staff are safe and that we are finding proven and effective ways to enhance our supervision within the department. And thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. There will be a chance to ask questions of the Secretary, but we're going to take the entirety of the panel and then do questions afterwards.
Sure.
And so, Director Bethia.
Go back.
Good afternoon. I'm honored to stand before you today as the Acting Director of Parole and Probation. I began my career with parole and probation here in the state of Maryland, actually in 2003. I loved my experience. It's where I grew up through the department, through the agency, from an Agent 1 through being a regional director. In 2013, I left the department and went to the federal government and worked for the Court Services and Offender Supervision Agency, and where I worked until I started with the department again on October the 2nd of this year. What I can tell you is that the CSOSA and Maryland have always had a cross-borders partner relationship. And so I have been involved in supporting the department since the incident, the tragic death of Agent Martinez occurred. After the incident occurred that Monday morning, myself and a detailed staff went to the Silver Spring office, provided support to that office, of course, while they were managing this tragedy. It is through this particular tragedy that calls me back to Maryland, really the pain, because we all felt that pain. I certainly did as a fellow agent myself. So really what calls me back is the pain of the people and the cry for change. And I know that I am poised with over 30 years of experience to actually facilitate the changes that are needed within the department. My commitment is here, my heart is here, and so what I know so far, as again, I've onboarded on October the 2nd, is that some of the foundational principles when it comes to community supervision have been impacted, have been broken, have not been fulfilled over a period of time. And that was highlighted or came out upon this incident. And so where I'm planning to take the agency under my leadership, you've already heard about the 40 hours of fortified training, but our staff needs to be fortified. They need to be developed in many areas. We will resume field work utilizing participating law enforcement partnerships, also our internal resources within the department. We will reinforce skill practice and supervisory observations. We will develop and implement policy to support the training that we are delivering. And then, of course, you've heard about the core correctional practices, about looking at our risk instrument, about targeting interventions, about it's important at this day and age to have integrated supervision practices, utilizing a clinical eye as well as a supervision eye to manage offenders within the community. We intend to align our practices with our APPA national standards when they are adopted. And one of the most critical things that we can do as a supervision agency is to focus on managing behavior and rather than simple activities. Sometimes within the field, we get to checking the box of activities, checking the box of just the standards of the release standards of supervision rather than actually keying in and understanding behavioral change when we see it. Sometimes as professionals, we will see that there is a behavioral change. We may not necessarily understand exactly what we're seeing, but that integrated approach between clinical and supervision is imperative in this day and age so that we can understand and respond appropriately in addressing non-compliant behavior. Also, we will address accountability and the fidelity in the work that we are doing through review and audit processes and aligning, again, our performance plans to match policy enhancements that we have and the training that we have. I can tell you since I started with the department, again, I onboarded on the 2nd. On October the 3rd, I met with the union, Ms. Rikanika Robinson. I wanted that opportunity to introduce myself and my vision and our collective approach to changing the future for the better. And I really want to take this opportunity to advance the agency, which I know that it can be. My vision for the Division of Parole and Probation, I want it to be the most robust supervision agency within the nation, and I know that we have the skill set and we can do it. I want us to be leading in the nation when it comes to employee safety. I want us to be leading in the nation when it comes to reduction of recidivism, and I want us to be leading in the nation when it comes to successful reintegration from incarceration back to the community. In addition to me meeting Ms. Robinson on October the 3rd, which was my second day in this position, I also met with the Silver Spring office. I met with the leadership there as well as with the line staff there. And I have met with several people throughout this week. One, I wanted them to know that they were important to me, and they had my commitment to supporting them through this tragedy, but also advancing us forward, advancing us, again, to be the safest supervision agency that we can be. I've also met with senior leadership. I've met with all of DPP leadership, which is about 80 some odd individuals. I have met with some of our specialized supervision teams, the sex offender teams, and supervisors through our comment symposium that was held on this week. I met with the current academy class on this week. And also, this week we participated in the Secretary's Town Hall when there were over about 80 participants. So what I'm trying to get at is that staff engagement and hearing from the field and hearing from boots on the ground that this will be a collaborative experience. Hearing from them, getting to know their concerns and how we can address the agency forward is something that I am committed to. On next week, I will be traveling to Oakland and to Cumberland to meet with staff there. I've also reviewed policies, not all of them, but some policies, and have began to make adjustments in some of the policies that we have. We have devised a preliminary plan to resume field work since it has been about 5 months since we have not performed that duty. I've also been reviewing staffing reports, our budget reports, our facilities portfolio, and meeting with OIT to explore technology that will help us to advance our supervision practices. So those are just some of the accomplishments that I have made in the few weeks that I have been here. And I will continue to work very furiously on behalf of not only our employees, but the citizens of Maryland. And again, I'm very honored to be able to stand in this position and to lead this agency forward.
Thank you, Director. Next is Deputy Director Caston Thompson.
Good afternoon. I'm Ms. Sinead Castine, and I was not originally scheduled to present, but if any questions you have for us, I'd be willing to do that. And if you have no questions, then I just would yield to our director and our secretary.
Understood. And is Deputy Director King scheduled to testify as well? Or
No,
not?
sir.
Okay, understood. With that, let's go to questions for any member of the panel. Senator Jackson.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation, and our condolences to the family. Having served in a public safety capacity, I certainly understand the loss of life of a member and their family because of the fact that we form a bond in this work. Madam Secretary and Madam Director, you spoke of things that you put in place. I heard briefly that you have met with OITC regarding putting IT in place to help monitor. So have you thought, just drilling down a little bit, from an objective assessment, periodic objective assessments of all the policies and procedures that you guys have in place? And if we're talking, I also was mentioned an audit. Are these periodic assessments, or are these assessments as you're putting things in place? That's one. And two, a dashboard component which can actually give you the information you need readily available on a daily basis of what's going on in the field. So if you could speak to those, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that question, Senator. And I'll start off and I'll let Acting Director continue. If you go to our DPSCS website, we've already started a dashboard for our parole and probation department where you can see many of those elements that we're trying to now expand, update, and make consistent. So one of the things that the new director, when she came on, and she has a lot of great ideas from CSOSA, where she has worked, is how we further engage and have those IT solutions so that they are updated on a regular basis and not just monthly, and that we're able to keep up with that IT information. You want to expound upon?
Sure. Thank you for the question and the opportunity to answer it. One of the things, I am a data-driven manager for sure, and so data is very important to me. We do have a dashboard. When I talk about assessments, particularly we have assessments in which we there are different fronts that I'm talking about assessments with. Assessment of our staff, procurement and accountability, assessment of risk. I'm very interested about being very robust about being able to assess the risks of the people that we have within the community. Currently, we're utilizing a third-generation risk instrument. There is a fifth-generation instrument that incorporates also machine learning. As you know, in certain areas within the field, technology and AI is being able to, even detect, just for instance, breast cancer before it's even detectable, by some doctors, if you will. And so there is work in the industry, there's work in the field that can help us through machine learning detect changes in behavior in which we potentially can address before there's actually another victim.
Thank you. Thank you for the information. I also wanted to ask, as you're doing these periodic assessments, and I look forward to finding out more what that periodic assessment phase that you're doing. Are you incorporating staff as well as you're looking to shoring up your policies to ensuring that the men and women that are actually doing the job are actually a part of this overall change that you have going?
We absolutely are, and we started that from day one. That's our think tanks. Our think tanks include all of our Agent 1s, our lower level staff, our shop stewards, because we wanted to make sure that our union partners were engaged with this, and we are making sure we take their ideas into consideration as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We're going to alternate between the chambers, so Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Solomon, and then I see Delegate Lewis will be the next House member after another Senate member. All right, Delegate Lewis, then Delegate Solomon after a minute.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairs, and of course, to the family, our deepest condolences again, and thank you for making the journey over here to Annapolis. I'm sure it wasn't easy. So I kind of want to start with a timeline, which leads quickly to my question, as I've been able to piece together based off of public statements. So as I understand it, on the day of the incident, Agent Martinez left for the site in a state vehicle around 8:30 a.m. And then around noon, another agent noticed that he was missing and then goes to look for him but can't find him. Information we have then says at 1 p.m., the supervisor called to check for Martinez but could not get connected to him. And then around 4 to 5 p.m., employees noticed that Agent Martinez's personal vehicle is still in the parking lot of the office and demand that the supervisors take action, at which point the supervisor calls the police. Around 5:45 p.m., the police force entry into the client, Emmanuel Edward Seward's Chevy Chase apartment where, the body was discovered. The question I had at first is, I understand some of the changes we had, but I just wanted to make sure we were clear on what was the issue that took so long for the supervisors? You weren't there, but I know you all have had conversations since. What took so long for them to call the police to begin with? Because the information I have also indicates that Agent Martinez was only supposed to be visiting, I think, one client that day, briefly. So he wasn't supposed to do a whole day. So I don't understand why we would wait until 5 o'clock to call when he was only supposed to do a quick 30-minute in and out.
Thank you for that question. And that's one of the things that disturbed us as well. And we found that there was a need for training of these supervisors. There was some sensitivity training that needed to be done for them. There was training where they needed to make sure they knew the sites and knew locations where their staff were going and that they followed up. So that's some of the things that we're doing now because there was no follow-up. The other thing that we've done is the state phones that are now issued to the agents have a tracker on them. So we're able to utilize that tracking device to see where that individual is at all times. So we understand there was grave concern about the supervisor's hesitancy or lack of motivation to be concerned where their employee was, and that's something that we're retraining them to do.
And the phones that you mentioned, are these phones new or?
The state phone, no, it's a state phone, they're iPhones that are issued. The tracking device had not been utilized on them, so we are activating that through our ITCD department and training staff how to use that. It is part of the new policy that we're developing that when you are working, that tracker must be on. You can turn it off when you're off work, but if you are working, that tracker must be on at all times so that we can identify where you are.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I had one more question and I'm done. Which is, before this incident, I just want to know, did the frontline agents or their labor representatives bring forth concerns of this nature to the department that would have been able to anticipate that? And was there a response to them?
So the union brought many concerns to the department, and the prior administration that was here, they were tasked with correcting that information. Unfortunately, they did not move as swiftly as we needed to, and unfortunately, this happened. We all regret that it happened. You don't know how deep it cuts me and hurts me just as much as it hurts my staff, because life safety is important to me and the safety of my staff is important to me. But we've moved beyond that. While we continue to always remember the death of Agent Martinez, we also use his death as a learning experience for us, that we must grow, that we must ensure safety and humanity for everyone that we work with.
Yeah, first I'll say I appreciate your service to the state of Maryland for your entire life. This is our first time having a hearing since he passed away. So I'll just respectfully say we haven't moved on just yet. We do appreciate the learning that's happened since. But of course, I think my colleagues and we're still in the midst of this.
It takes
we
time.
need a few answers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to Agent Martinez's family, I echo the chair and Chair Barnes's condolences. My mother was actually a probation officer for 30 years, and I spent my childhood with her going out into the field, and I cannot imagine her not coming home. So please know that this entire committee and entire General Assembly are with you. Madam Secretary, I have two questions, one on risk assessment, you've touched on briefly, the other on caseload. And I wish I could say this is the first time we've had these conversations, but every time you have had a budget hearing in front of our subcommittee, and Delegate Lewis's subcommittee, we've had these same conversations. So I too am frustrated that we continue to have these conversations. I would suggest while this was a tragic incident, there were structural systems that led to a lack of what I think is urgent response, but also the fact that one of our state employees, a public servant, lost his life. So I'll stick with the risk assessment, and if we have time, Mr. Chair, I'd love to talk about caseloads. You mentioned that you're reevaluating the two risk assessment tools that you use, both of which I feel have fall short of what they intended to do to keep our community safe, to keep your agents safe. It's my belief that the first one, the initial risk assessment tool, risk screener tool, is only 3 questions long. That's obviously a concern in terms of its ability to effectively evaluate someone's risk, especially their risk to our communities, to themselves, and obviously to your agents. I appreciate that you're reevaluating the first tool and the second tool, which also I understand even our Office of Program Analysis has fallen short of actually assessing the risk these folks, again, pose to themselves or our communities. Can you talk to us about, while you're reevaluating those risk assessments, what you are looking for, what more holistic approach can you take, including speaking with a client's family members, speaking with any public health officials that they have engaged with? How do you get a more comprehensive assessment, again, of someone's risk to themselves and to our community?
So let me answer that twofold, if I may. First, I take you back to my presentation that I just did, where you see that more than 60% of those individuals that are on community supervision are assigned by the courts. The court does not do a risk assessment when they put them in our communities. They make a judgment call. So they're already in our communities when they come to us. Let's be mindful of that. Then it is our responsibility, once we get them, to do that risk assessment. So there have been conversations with the new leadership as to the effectiveness of that risk assessment. We have had several universities assist us in assessing the assessments that we're doing to make sure that it is best practices and that we are following standards, that guidelines that are across the states in order to do that. So that's why we know, in looking at that, that's why we know we need to revamp that. I know that my my deputy director of administration, she does all of the policy and she works with the university. So I'm going to let her give you a little insight on what we've learned with that project.
Good afternoon again. I share your sentiment when it comes to the risk assessments. And so, as you are probably more aware, we are legislatively bound to have them revalidated every 3 years. A part of that process, we recently have how we started with the initial risk assessment, which is what's done as soon as everyone comes in the door. That was validated on the Maryland population. So while it is a limited scope for the initial assessment of risk, that was validated by the university that developed it on Maryland populations. From that risk assessment, we then go into the LSIR. That's where we found that, in fact, our study that was done on whether or not Maryland was administering that was not being done successfully. And the recommendation then was to only utilize the LSIR as what we call case planning tool, which are trying to identify what someone's risk is, what their needs are, and what we need to put in place to support that need, risk responsivity. So from there, we only utilize the LSIR to determine what someone's criminogenic needs are. What resources do we need to link that individual to try to help them be successful under supervision? The baseline of the initial risk assessment doesn't mean that that's the only, if it comes out, I'm gonna use a bad example, low. It doesn't mean that the agent can't see that person more. Simply because they come out as a risk low, they could have a high need. And so that's one of the things that Dr. Bethea is leading us into, to start taking a look at what assessments are going to be better able for us to identify when we do have that individual who scores low on an initial risk assessment, but their need is higher. How do we then address that? So from that LSIR, we are only using it as a case planning tool currently. One of the other things we were charged to do was to validate our sex offender risk assessments, which are the static 99 and acute 2000. Those have been found to be validated risk assessment tools. They are utilized throughout the nation. It was shown that we are effectively always have room for growth, continued training, but that is a validated risk assessment tool. So we are charged every 3 years currently to take a look at those tools with the help of Dr. Bethea and her leadership. We'll definitely be doing more in terms of looking for additional research to really determine which tools are out there that's going to best meet our needs. So that process is in place. And that's why you do see that difference in the initial risk assessment versus the LSIR. As she spoke earlier, it is an older tool, and we are definitely looking at additional tools.
If I could just ask your timeline moving forward, appreciating we're currently in the system we have, which we all acknowledge is not ideal. What is your timeline? And again, who are you bringing together? And I know you just came on the job, but what are you, from your experience elsewhere, what do you think we are missing? What should this Joint Committee think about when we meet next in January?
One thing, let me say, when it comes to the assessment of risk, that it's an ongoing process. every encounter, every engagement with a supervisee is an assessment of risk. And so that's a training point with staff. What is it that you're seeing? Understanding what you're seeing, having consultation when you don't quite know what to do with what you see. And so that's an ongoing process. So even with the most advanced tools being utilized in the industry, we also have to train and mold judgment, right? And so the timeline really for this is, of course, you know that there's a solicitation and procurement process and you know, all of that. So the timeline will be, you know, several months for us to get through that process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. I do have another question on caseloads, but I'll defer to others.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in for a second, then give it to Delegate Solomon very quickly. I'm going to go to the question about when the police are accompanying an agent to a home. Is there a limitation on the agency that's, like, for example, I represent Baltimore City. Is it only a Baltimore City police officer, or are there other police officers who could be of assistance to parole and
Any
probation?
commissioned law enforcement officer can be of assistance to us. For example, we have within the department the warrant apprehension unit that are commissioned law enforcement officers currently, and they have been before going out with our parole and probation agents. It's just that we started to create partnerships because, especially in Baltimore City where our larger population is, and we know where many of the higher risk supervisors are. That's why we wanted to partner with them. And now we do have that MOU in place. We can pick up the phone. The agent can let the city officer know that they're going to a house on wherever Greenmount Avenue, and they'll be met there with the police officer so that they can do the assessment.
All right, go in a different direction here for another shorter question. You have agents who work with people who are on probation, some of whom are at a high risk level, some of them are at a low risk level. Mm-hmm. Do you keep any data as to the length of time that the probation agent works with a person with high need or a person who is a higher risk?
All of that is maintained and monitored through the case notes that's in our offender case management system. And there are incidents, so every 3 months we review that level to see whether that level needs to be increased or decreased for that individual. So that information is readily available.
But that's for the probationer. Is the person who is supervising them, do you keep track of how long that person is actually supervising that person?
You're aware of who that agent is, when that agent changes, if it goes back to that agent for some reason. The agent may change because the agent say it's a female that goes out on FMLA for maternity leave. We see that change because it's in our offender case management system. So we know who that new agent is. And when that person comes back and that case is referred back to the original agent, we can document. And everything in between is documented as to how that agent handled that case.
As somebody who has seen the gigantic folders in some cases that probation agents bring to court with them, I know that everything is documented. I guess my bigger question and my bigger concern, since it seems that communication between agents seems to be an ongoing problem, and I heard there's going to be training and I heard everything else, I'm concerned about whether in those more serious cases that we're actually keeping some consistency to the extent that we can.
And that's why we're putting policy in place that before a transfer happens, there are certain checklist things that you have to do. You have to have that multidisciplinary team review. You have to review it with the transferring and receiving agents. Those type things were not happening, I will tell you. They were not happening. You would just get the case and basically read the case notes to familiarize yourself. Now there is a sit down amongst the transferring team to have discussion, to tell if there are any additional alerts that may not be in the system that you want to share, but there's a full conversation occurring now between the transferring and the receiving agent, as well as the supervisor that's making the transfer.
Madam Secretary, there are 43,000, you said 43,381 people under supervision. Mm-hmm. How many of them are at a high risk?
Good question. I don't have that data in front of me. You don't have the data with you. How many are at high risk? We'll get that information for you, sir. That's a question we'll get back to you.
I'm going to thank Delegate Solomon for his patience. Delegate Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chairs. And I just wanted to, again, echo and express my condolences to the family. I represent the same district as Senator Waldstreicher, where the event occurred, and the community is just really hurting. So I wanted to just express again my condolences to the entire family of Agent Martinez, as well as our parole family. And I wanted to echo a lot of the comments of my colleagues. I think I have heard similar issues, that this is an ongoing problem. And I think, as has been said before, really want to make sure that we're collaborating and getting this right, especially from the personnel side of things. I guess I had a couple of sort of quick questions, some of which are piggybacking off of other topics that have been brought up, but I wanted to echo Delegate Lewis's questions around when the police were called. And I guess you had a statement in your remarks that really stood out to me, that you said your agency has done a review and found no policy violations. But similar to Delegate Lewis, what stood out to me in looking at the timeline was that it took arguably 5 or 6 hours from when he was supposed to check in at noon to the police actually being called, in addition to the 2 hours when they found out that his car was still there. So I guess my question is, do you have a formal policy of when police are supposed to be called when an agent is missing or is presumed to be missing or can't be found? And what is that policy?
Great question, and thank you for that question. Prior to us finding that out from the investigation, no, sir, there was no policy. And that's one of the things that we're building to work on. One of the things that I find very difficult is I come from the correction side, where everything is driven by policy and procedure. And there are outdated policies in DPP that we're currently working on updating, and there are absence of policies in DPP that we're working on creating. So we've learned a lot from this unfortunate incident, and that was one of them.
Okay, well, I will look forward to seeing what those new policies are when they're ready to go, and I hope that they're being developed collaboratively, not only with your workforce, but with labor leadership as well. I was curious also to get into the stats that you cited on the PPE and what you had shared. I guess there's a question in my mind that I've heard from talking to some personnel. Can you confirm here today that the vests that you're referring to that have already been purchased and that are in the process of being refitted, are those actually bulletproof and stab-proof?
So we purchase our vests from Atlantic Tactical, that's the vendor. We purchase both bulletproof vests, ballistic vests, and then we also have stab vests. So if you are doing a on-site visit, you are being fitted for a ballistic vest. So that's what the 400 that we have now contracted the first go-round to do, they are 400 ballistic vests that we are fitting individuals for.
So, and I will plead some ignorance here. I am new to this area of policy. So ballistic vest, would that stop a knife attack?
They'll stop a knife as well as a bullet, the ballistic vest should.
And can you give us documentation that that's the case?
We can get the specs from Atlantic Tactical and give it to you.
Okay, I think many of us on this committee
Yeah,
would be
we can
really interested in
definitely do
seeing
that.
that. And then the last question, and I appreciate the indulgence, also to piggyback off of what the chair was asking in terms of the dual visit piece. So I was frustrated that even though this has taken place in Montgomery County, I didn't hear you mention the Montgomery County Police Department, which does an incredible job. And I guess I have a concern around how do you navigate a situation where if a local law enforcement agency is overburdened and may not have the staffing ability to supplement essentially what is a parole function, is that visit supposed to be delayed indefinitely until a police officer can get out there? And what happens if ultimately the police say, we don't have the bandwidth to do this, you're on your own, you're a separate agency, we'd love to, but we can't do our own mission? Do you then fill the gap with a separate agent? What's the outcome if the local police department can't fill the gap?
Another great question that we've already experienced. And reaching out to some of local law enforcement, we found out that they do not have the bandwidth to actually help us because they're experiencing low staffing levels as well. And that's why we are utilizing our internal police department, our warrant apprehension unit that goes out with those individuals. They have the same arrest power as local law enforcement does. So we are continuing to work with law enforcement to see that those that can help us, we will continue to engage and make MOUs with them. But if we need to supplement, we will continue to use our internal warrant apprehension unit to do that.
So then just to clarify that point, so if I'm an agent working in Montgomery County or anywhere in the state where there is not a formal MOU with the local police department, I do not feel comfortable visiting an individual by myself. Can you guarantee us today that any agent that needs a partner or a law enforcement official to go out with them in a difficult situation will have that person come with them?
They will have that person go with them. It may mean delaying that actual visit that day, but they will schedule that individual to go with them, yes.
Okay, I think I am looking forward to seeing that policy in writing, and I think many of my colleagues are as well. Thank you.
And that is actively happening right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairs.
Thank you, Delegate Solomon. Senator Folden and then Senator McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Secretary, thank you for being here. I'm kind of speechless on some of these points that have been pointed out. Before I go on, I do want to also pass along my condolences to the Martinez family. This is a terrible tragedy, and my hope is that we're going to look to continue to find solutions, not just, and move forward, not lip service. I am an active police officer. I'm the only active police officer left in the legislature. I wear a ballistics vest. I'm a part of these processes. I'm curious as, you know, parole and probation agents, 100% of the people that they deal with, 100% are already post-conviction. Is that agreeable?
Correct.
They deal with the people that are the known violators, convicted. Even police officers get to deal with people on their cats up in the tree or something less volatile. Every parole agent who goes on a home visit is dealing with someone that's been convicted. I can't wrap my brain around the idea that, one, there was no welfare policy on checking on the well-being of an agent who was not available and not responsive to a phone call. Do they not have radios as well? They just only have cell phones?
They have cell phones.
No handheld radios with an emergency button?
They have cell phones.
So that just blows my mind, that people that we know 100% of the time are dealing with convicted persons have no welfare policy. Another point that I find alarming is that in the age that we live in, or the times that we live in, where body-worn cameras are so invaluable in law enforcement, it's an ingrained element given to every police officer on the street. We have people who are going and visiting these post-conviction, and we don't equip agents with body cameras. They're a safety thing, as well as it verifies what they're writing in their notes. Did this get said? Did this get said by the suspect or the parolee? And did the agent ask the question properly? You want to talk about a training tool? You're talking about modifying training? Body-worn cameras allow for the development and evolution of an agency because they have literal, definable evidence of what transpired and how we can then educate our agents off of that.
I agree.
So that's another point. I really, and then you briefly glossed over the arming of agents. It was just a quick discussion. And then I don't know where we are on that. Is that something that's not really considered? I know your warrant apprehension unit has it.
So can I respond to all of your comments?
Sure.
Let's first start with the convictions. Everyone that's convicted is not of a felony offense. There are convictions for misdemeanor traffics that that the judges put them on probation for. There's probation before judgment, which you know is not a conviction, that they're on probation for. So there are different levels of probation that you have out there. And some of those individuals are just like you and I that made a mistake with a traffic that are no risk to anyone. And then we have the high end, where those individuals that are risk. With the body-worn cameras, I agree with you 100%. What I will share with you and share with this committee is that we already started implementing the body-worn cameras with our warrant apprehension unit. We attempted to start a pilot program at Patuxent Institute on the correctional side so that we can see how they're used and use them for evidence-based. And unfortunately, our union partners had concern and we had to pause it. So we have already made the purchase for those cameras, the initiative to use them. We're just going through some negotiation right now with our union partners to ensure that they're comfortable about how we use them, that they understand that we're not using them as a gotcha, but we're using them as a safety mechanism for our staff all across the agency. And remind me what your last comment was, please.
Arming of agents?
The arming of agents, it's a very sensitive topic. As I did town halls back in August and again a couple of weeks ago, we have a divided force. We have many agents that want to be armed. We have some that don't want to be armed, and we have others because of religious reasons don't want to be armed. And that's why we did the survey across the United States to see what is the practice, basically. We know that many of our parole and probation agents across the state are armed because they're part of a commissioned law enforcement agency. So we are still exploring that and exploring how we effectively do that. It may mean creating an internal team that is just the team that within DPP that is armed, and then they're used to navigate throughout the state when they need to go out with someone. So we have not dismissed that thought. We are just still reviewing it.
So what percentage of all your parolees require house visits?
Right now, I am aware that it is our sex offenders under our comment program that are mandated, those absconders that are not, they did not live here in Maryland, they're here from another state. That's a requirement. A population I missed?
The reason I'm asking is because the ones that require home visits are the ones that are the most serious offenders. And we're sending agents unarmed, apparently without a requirement for a vest. Is that accurate?
So
They're not required to have a vest?
they are required. So we do
required to have
have
a vest.
policy that requires the agents to wear the vest that's issued to them. That policy has been in place for a very long time. The folks who are required, anyone coming in who we, based on the risk assessment, are high, moderate, VPI, all of our sex offenders require an on-site home visit. Based then on the lower risk assessments, then the home visit may be substantiated as what we call a home collateral. That means that they can bring in a piece of mail, the agent can do a video with the individual who, you know.
Yeah, I'm just
does the
speaking to
video
the
in the
higher
house.
level offenses, because I've got several friends that are PMP agents. And I know that that's the, you know, you have your warrant apprehension unit and they're armed for a reason. So why, I don't know, is there any mindset being given to the idea that you have a specialized group that is just for home visits and they also would be armed instead of allowing your agents who are handling tiered?
That was my exact comment to you, that we are exploring that because we have such a diverse population and the complexities of having to have everybody armed, and some people that don't want to be have made it clear to us that we're looking at, do we take a group of PINs and we establish an internal unit within that department that is armed, and then they would be specific to handling those types of details.
Yeah, I think that's a really important element to this. Because the last thing we want is any additional injuries or loss of life. And you have people that are willing to do it and take the training, and you're then no longer subjecting people who don't want to be armed to the very real threats of the top tier that that these home visits are required from their threat level. So
Thank you for your comment.
Chairman Clipping.
Madam Secretary, how many people are under comment supervision today?
I'm sorry. How many under comment supervision? Deputy Director Caskins is pulling up her statistical data for you, sir. And we'll
I guess
get
it
that
goes
to
to
you.
my broader, maybe a broader, less than subtle point, that if I understand the 61% of the people who are under supervision. 61% that you talked about that are everything from driving without a license to manslaughter to murder and everything in between. But it's very difficult for me to comprehend how we're going to have substantive policy changes unless we have some handle on exactly the number of people that we're dealing with on a daily basis. So I look forward to getting that information. I'm happy to get it afterwards. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to start off, as a number of my colleagues have done, just keeping the thoughts and prayers with the Martinez family. I know that this didn't happen in my district, Mr. Chair, but I do believe in the one Maryland concept, and what happens to one of us happens to all of us. Madam Secretary, I have a question for yourself, and then I have my second question for Dr. Bethea, and I'll ask them just for expediency. You talked about the American Parole and Probation National Standards, and there was a date, I think it said June 2024, and you talked about taking a look at those best practices. If you could speak to the timeline in which you believe that it would take you and your agency, that would be helpful after taking a look, and maybe some form of implementation. And for Dr. Bethea, you talked about policies that you've already made adjustments to, but if you could just highlight 5 of them that you think that this hearing that would lift up, and when you held the position, when did you implement those policies? That would be helpful to be able to take in. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, sir. So the American Parole and Probation Association and the Standards Committee is still looking at the standards associated. They are doing something very similar to what ACA does on the correction side. It is their goal to have those standards published hopefully first quarter of 2025. And I suspect that when they publish those standards, we'll have the same type of audit structures that we do with ACA and other entities that we'll be able to then become a part of and make sure that we are meeting those standards throughout the state of Maryland. So, so we're hoping first quarter of next year, those standards are published. And once they are published, we hope to follow each and every one of them.
And thank you again for your question. So some of the policies that in my very short period of time of being here, one definitely is field work. What constitute field work, critical incidents, and case management practices are just a few of the policies that we have looked at, that I have had an opportunity to look at in the first 3 weeks that I've been here. You asked about a timeline. Also, well, policy development, the review will be an ongoing process, and we will prioritize those policies as well as our supervision manual. And so that will be a very robust, ongoing process. We have quite a bit of number of policies, some that may not even be relevant due to our practices at this point. And so we have to go through the process of revising those, of going through the whole vetting process, and legal sufficiency and all of that. So it is a process that's going to take some time, but it is a priority that we have, and we will advance it as quickly as we possibly can, particularly those that are dealing around public safety and safety of our staff as well. Those will be our priority policies.
Thank you so much.
And if I may,
Please.
Senator and Delegate Clippinger, circle back. There are 3,574 total sex offenders under active supervision right now. That's 3,574.
I'm good.
Mr. Chairman.
Wait, where am I? My Vice Chair, I apologize. Madam Vice Chair Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, and all of the deputies and directors who are here today. I have a few questions on a more general level. How many? I know you said that there is currently a 7.4% vacancy rate. How many probation and parole agents do you have currently? Did you give that number? And if
No,
you-
I didn't give the current number. I gave you percentages. Within Division of Parole and Probation, we have approximately 1,000 employees. Approximately 900 of them are agents at some level. They may be an Agent 1 all the way through a field supervisor there. What I will say to you, with this graduating class that we have on November 7th, the other 40 we have in background check, it will fill every pin that we have within the Division of Parole and Probation. And if those 40 that are in background check, if any of them do not clear, we do have a waiting list of another 40 odd people that are qualified, but we have not put through background check as of yet.
Okay, great. So how long is the DPP Academy?
It's 6 weeks.
6 weeks, okay. And how often, I guess this is a question for Director Bethia, how often do you actually meet face-to-face? And I'm going to use a word in the private industry for lack of knowledge, with line managers, and if you understand what I mean, and I'm sure you do.
It's a common practice of mine we have 38 offices across the state of Maryland, is to make routine rounds continuously throughout the state. So it will be a continual practice to meet with our line staff.
So for instance, 3 times a week, twice a week, 3 times a month? I mean, can you give me something to hold on to?
To meet with all of line staff? We will meet with dedicated field offices monthly.
Do you all get together collaboratively where everybody's in the room at the same time?
Yes. Well, I will say that part of my vision going forward is to have a in-person town hall in which we all get together. That would be also a training opportunity, but also build collaboration throughout the state. So that is a vision that I have. The new leadership team has already been in conversation and slight planning about it. They recommended to me, since I am new to the agency, is that around May may be a good time to execute that, because then we want to acknowledge performance at that time, do some and at that point, the performance awards and all that stuff, will be out to have a speaker to come and to focus on a topic. So that is something that is in the works. And
I think that would be great. I think it should be an annual event, if not biannual, because the collaboration in the room is where you get the good ideas. Last thing I wanted to ask was, well, actually, 2 more quick questions. I was looking at a report from 2020 that mentions the war room. Does the war room still exist, and do you know what I'm talking about?
yes, the war room still exists.
Okay. And has a mobile office, and Madam Secretary, you might have remarked on this, has a mobile office been set to take DPP into the communities? And where is that mobile office?
A wonderful vision that we would love to have with the investment and support of our constituents, for sure. We would love to do that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
If I can expand, there were original designs and thoughts of the mobile office. Due to budgetary constraints, it did not happen, but one of the things that we started was called a knock and talk, which actually took the agent into the community. It happened at least once a month. The agent, along with a social worker, actually visited out in the community at the person's home. We made sure they were doing well. They had the resources. I've been on several of the knock and talks with these agents all year long, just to see what they were doing and how effective it was, and making sure we connect those individuals to community resources in the community.
So that still exists?
It does. We
Okay.
still have the knock and talk.
Okay.
Yep. And we invite each and any one of you, if we're in your district, to come out and do the knock and talk with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Elfreth.
Thank you. We kind of danced around it. Senator McCray, Senator Folden touched on caseloads. And going back to the American Parole and Probation Association's recommended levels, I have in front of me, they recommended a 20-to-1 ratio for intensive supervision, so our highest risk, highest need, 50-to-1 for moderate, 200-to-1 for low. Yet looking at our levels here in Maryland and fully appreciate it's partly funding, it's partly recruitment, retention issues, but we're falling short here. And in Agent Martinez's case, in his Silver Spring office, we have a caseload average of 99-to-1. Madam Secretary, you and I have spent a lot of budget hearings talking about nuance of these cases, these caseloads, whether a more senior agent should have primarily a lower caseload of higher need, higher risk clients versus somebody who's new should take on lower. But I think what we're hearing, and Senator Folden's point before about particularly sex offenders and particularly people who we know are highest risk, perhaps we need agents who have greater training, greater tools at their disposal, all of that. I would be remiss if we didn't think through this opportunity now to reevaluate caseloads in a more nuanced way, not just to help with burnout, which is a real challenge for your agents, but also, again, for community safety, both for your agents, but also I continue to be frustrated with the level of folks under supervision throughout the state who are still involved in acts of violence, either as victims or involved in other ways. And so I hope if you can commit to me that the caseload situation is also under evaluation based on this incident, and if so, what are you looking for? What is your timeline for that?
It is continuously under evaluation. Our goal is to fill our vacancies first so that we can redistribute caseload appropriately, but also through the training that we're now imposing, the behavioral health training, the wellness training, the defense tactics training. It is my hope that those individuals that take on those trainings are better equipped to manage that population, that more severe population. So we're looking at all of that. Again, at least by February, we know that all of our pens will be filled, and we'll be happy to come back before you and say we need more, if indeed we do, because that's the time we'll really be able to reassess what does this population look like right now, and how is it being effectively distributed to be managed. So we'll know then whether or not there is a greater need.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Let's go to Delegate McComas.
Delegate McComas, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, I appreciate it. These might be inappropriate questions, and if they are, just shut me down, okay? My question is, has the case gone to trial yet of the person that is alleged to have killed Agent Martinez?
Mr. Sewell has been deemed not competent to stand trial. He is in an undisclosed location right now, and he is waiting for an assignment to Perkins,
Okay,
to
all
a
right.
mental health hospital.
Okay, so the question is, on his assessment, was he considered high risk, and it was just a 3-question assessment, or was it a longer assessment? If you know, if you don't know, okay.
So the assessments that are done on anyone who is on our comment supervision caseloads, our sex offender caseloads, they get what's called a static 99 assessment, which is actually a much longer in-depth assignment. It is not a quick, 1, 2, 3 answers. From that assessment determines their risk level. In this case, the offense for which someone is supervised for also impacts what that assessment outcome can, the classification can also be impacted by the actual offense they're under supervision for. So here in Maryland, if you have been convicted of a sex offense, you may be on supervision to us now for theft, but you're on the sex offender registry, or you have another sex offense for which you've been convicted, we place you into our comment supervision for that public safety aspect. So while the department may not be supervising you specifically for the sex offense, it's still a part of your criminal record, and we want to make sure that safeguards are in place for that. So in this case, the offender in this case was actually being supervised for assault. So his prior sex offense is why he was in our comment caseload.
So the other question is, did you have access to his prior, let's say, pre-sentence investigation reports from the, that the judges looked at and his defense attorney and prosecutor did? Did you have access to his full criminal record? Was there any access to if there was any juvenile offenses that you were able? So you kind of, you knew what you had. And then the other question is, was he on medication? Had he had a history of psychiatric issues or psychosis? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is the more you know about what you're dealing with, probably the better off you are. Now, the other thing was, did Mr. Martinez, Agent Martinez, did he have a gun with him at the time? How was he killed?
Okay, so the part of the question I'll be able to answer, and then I will yield, is that anyone who is under supervision, the agents are responsible for doing a criminal background. So we have access to databases to do both Maryland criminal history and nationwide criminal history. We also have access to the juvenile system so that we can see any juvenile history that is there. While some of that is protected, we can see if they were a member of a threat group, meaning any type of gang affiliation, if they were supervised by the juvenile services and their violence prevention initiatives. So all of that information is incorporated into the risk assessment. So even
did you have his psychiatric record if he'd ever been in some place like Perkins or Spring
right, that I
Grove?
cannot disclose, nor and I can't disclose any medication. That would all be confidential.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So again, medical records, because of HIPAA laws, we can not disclose any psychological issues that he had or any psychotropic medications or regular medications.
So even if he had received treatment within the criminal system, you wouldn't
We
have
could not
access to that?
disclose it. We do disclosure even within the criminal justice system. Yes, ma'am. Okay. And your question as to whether or not he had a gun, he did not have a gun. He did have his vest on. But because it is still considered an ongoing case because of his evaluation
Okay.
to go
Well,
to
that's why I said
Perkins,
you had to
we
just-
can't go into that.
Well, it's tragic. It is really a
is
tragic
absolutely
situation
tragic.
for
Yes, sir. Yes,
your
ma'am.
agency, but most importantly for the family.
Absolutely, I agree.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I thought I was going to be finished, but a couple more questions came up, so my apologies. You mentioned that he was under evaluation or home visit for an assault. Was it a first degree or second degree assault?
We're talking about Mr. Sewell.
Yes.
It was, sir, it was a second degree assault, sir. Second degree assault.
It was a second degree assault? Okay. And, Madam Secretary, you made a comment, you referenced the prior administration, and that they were notified by the union to make changes. When did you come on to staff, ma'am?
January 2023, I became secretary.
And when were these changes that you were apparently aware of before your term? Do you know when they were offered?
So we had begun, we have LMC meetings with the union.
Okay.
We have, at my level, they're quarterly. At the facility levels, they're typically monthly. So that information had been being shared with previous administrators, and the reports, I get a weekly report from them that was advising me that these things were indeed occurring. It is most unfortunate that some of the things that we thought policies that were in place, that I thought were in place, were absolutely, there are policies in place that were not being adhered to.
Okay, so that's an oversight, supervisory oversight issue, if they're not
But
following
and it
policy.
was deep into the department. It was not just at
It was
that
practice,
leadership
not
level.
policy. Their
In some-
practice
in
was
some
different than
instances-
policy.
In some instances, you're correct.
But you made a comment about that there was specific recommendations offered by the union to the prior administration. And that, did they just, I guess what I'm asking is if you know about them, when were they offered? And then why,
So,
at
again-
what point when you came in, were they no longer addressed, or you were having these dialogues with the union.
They were to be addressed by the then director, 2 deputy directors, and the regionals. The direction had been given to me for them to be addressed. The information that I was receiving was that they were being addressed. I was getting reports that this information was being handled, only to find out later through investigation that it was not.
So that's a little different than what you were saying for the prior administration, because now what you're saying is that your administration, you had people that were in these meetings that were reporting to you that they were being taken care of, but now you've learned since then that they were not.
We have learned since then.
So it was under your administration, not the prior. It was also under the prior.
It goes back under the prior as well.
But it was under your administration.
So it did continue under my administration, and that's why you saw the change in leadership.
So we have a lack of oversight all the way to the top.
For the most part, we did.
Okay, thank you.
So first I want to say thank you to my colleagues. They asked some of the questions, particularly on technology, that I wanted us to get to, from body-worn cameras to, hopefully we can use technology as a way to manage caseloads with lower, threshold clients, maybe having more virtual visits with ankle monitoring, et cetera, so we can double up. My question was, you stated that we will have, or at least the goal of having full employment for DPP. I just want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Correct. With the vacancies that we currently have, the 40-some are vacancies, the graduation in November of 35 individuals, and then the potential academy class that we have starting in February, that will fill the vacancies that we have. And even if, like I said, even if before there are individuals in this group that may not pass background check, we have a waiting list. I will say to you that the concern is when you apply to be an agent, you can also make a request as to what region you work in. And many people put the Baltimore region. So one of the things that we're doing right now is individuals that we know are going through background check and are qualified that have requested Baltimore, we're asking them to consider the capital region, the East and the West, because that's where we see our vacancies at. And we're hoping that they'll do that, knowing that in a couple of years, someone may retire and they may be able to come to Baltimore to work or transfer to another location.
I appreciate that, because that was one of my questions, wondering where these folks who are coming on board are going. Are they going to the capital region too, where it seems like...
Our greatest vacancies, we compete with CSOSA. I was fortunate enough to steal someone from them, but in the capital region, we compete very highly with them. As I'm sure you probably know, their salary starts a lot greater than ours. Their opportunities are better. But we're hoping that with this graduating class, we're going to be, if not full, but close to actually filling the Western region, and then we can start focusing on the capital and the East. But those are the 3 regions that we have difficulty. We don't have much difficulty filling the Baltimore region.
I really hope that helps with the caseload side. I have another quick question, and this gets back to some of the changes you were referencing as relates to like safety for agents moving forward. I know there's a lot of training that's going forward, but all of us have at some point in our career worked for folks, and it seems to me from your own words that there was a challenge, particularly deep in the department was the words you said, with some of middle management and some of what needed to happen working its way up. And fortunately, we have a structure that allows for these type of challenges to go all the way to the top when you bargain with your labor representative. So I just want to make sure we are clear that when it comes to the safety and some of these changes, you all are like making those in conjunction with the labor representative.
Safety, again, is paramount to me. One of the things that I've done, I've had several meetings. They have included the shop stewards for all of the different regions have been at that meeting. I've had at least 2 town halls with the DPP staff, one in August, another one as recently as this month. We actually had a comment symposium 2 days ago now, I believe it was Tuesday, where I actually got to speak again to all of those DPP agents and shop stewards that are, of course, their union representation that actually service the sex offender component of that agency. So yes, we are definitely including them. We also, my administrative team under the Deputy Secretary of Administration is responsible for engaging with our labor unions. So there are quarterly meetings held in that arena as well.
So the folks we labor representative?
Some of them that you meet today are an integral part of that. They are, many of them have been what we call TDY to the union, so they're not boots on the ground right now, but they are the representative because they have served in that capacity at one time or another. Okay. So we do have interaction with them, as well as the new Deputy Director, King, who has come on, who's in charge of operations. I can tell you that one of the first things that he did when he was placed in acting was start to meet directly with one of the union reps that I'm sure you'll hear from today, so that we could make sure that we continue to build a strong engagement and collaboration with the union.
Okay, the reason I'm harping on this is because I'm from Central Prince George's County. We have a saying called every now and then you need to talk king to king. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because it can be intimidating for a worker to go to their supervisor who knows that they are under the same challenges that they are on to report challenges that they are experiencing, right? Because that supervisor is ultimately responsible for their outcomes. So if we have high caseloads, the timeline that I have shows that Agent Martinez, among other folks, was saying that this individual was threatening.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of what you said.
The timeline that I have shows that Agent Martinez was saying well in advance that this person was threatening to the supervisor. Your words are saying that it is deep within the supervisors, deep within the department, that information wasn't flowing up the way it needs to. What I am trying to just make sure you guys receive from what I'm communicating right now is that when you all meet with the labor representative for DPP, for the correction side, they are going to bring that same concerns that Agent Martinez or Agent Martinez-like folks would have. And we can skip past some of those supervisors to those of you all who ultimately are the decision makers. I just want to make sure that as we are determining policy, they're being utilized as an actual thought partner and not just something on the back end. It's like we're checking the box. Okay?
And first, let me say thank you for your comment, but I'm not aware, and we're happy to share also with you all the redacted investigation if we need to. And I've read that investigation at least 5 times, and I'm not aware of Agent Martinez making any concerns about that. There may have been the previous agent that was involved making some allegations that they just didn't feel comfortable. It was not Agent Martinez.
So you don't have any documentation?
It should have been Agent Gomez who originally had the case, and that's why it was given to Agent Martinez.
Yeah. On May 7th, before the May 31st incident?
Yeah, and we can share that report so that you can see it.
Thank you.
Whoever made the point is still valid. Mm-hmm. Maybe we need a different system for actually establishing complaints from your employees, up the ladder. Every pin in parole and probation, when you fill these 40-some-odd pins, is going to be full?
Yes, sir.
Do you think you have enough pins?
Absolutely not, sir.
Have you asked DBM for more pins in the 26 budget?
The first thing we did, we told them that we're probably going to need them. We're looking at vacant pins that we have right now that we can reclassify.
Have you asked DBM for more pins?
We have not asked them for a specific amount of pins.
You think you need more pins, but you have not asked DBM for more pins?
Because we have to first look, per DBM, we have to look at the pins that we have that are vacant, and we will send in reclassifications for those pins to become agents or whatever that classification we need, and then we can go back to them with what's over the target for that.
When you finish that process, will you report back to these committees how that went, how many pins were freed up, and how many pins you believe you need, and how many pins you've asked DBM for before their 26 budget?
Happy to share that with you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Delegate Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Secretary, I wanted to follow up on the PPE piece, and I'm going to preface this with, I'm not an expert in this area. I'm somewhat new to this facet, but through the wonders of technology, I got a text message screenshot of the inside of the vests and the warning label that is on it. So again, I'm not an expert on this, but I think this is a really important point and would love some clarity from you and your team. So it says, warning, this garment is rated only for the ballistic threat type stated above. It is not intended to protect against rifle fire or sharp-edged or pointed instruments. Again, layman's perspective means that does not protect against a knife or stabbing, and you and your team said that it did. So can you
No,
square
my
that
team
circle
didn't
for
say
me?
that. I said that it
Okay,
did.
okay.
So let's get that straight first. I said that it did. But I'd like to see that as well, and let's see if that's what all of the vests say. We need to look at all of the vests to see if that's what it says inside.
Well, we need to get to the bottom of this because,
Because is that a newly issued vest, or is that a vest that someone has had for a while?
well, I think we need to get to the bottom of this.
We will definitely do that. They're not stab-proof. So, Mr. King, you want to tell them that they're not stab-proof?
The vests that were currently issued are not stab-proof. They are actually ballistic vests, as you stated.
There you go.
All right, so when are they all getting replaced? You said people had to request a new vest that if they chose. This leads me to believe that every vest should be reissued because you told me they were all stab-proof, and they're not.
I told you that they weren't.
Correct.
Because that was my understanding. Let's correct that. So I stand corrected.
So okay.
She's gonna
Somebody please correct me that every field agent is going to get a new vest now.
So if I can explain the process. These DOC side are issued, they primarily receive stab vests. Agents primarily and only receive ballistic vests. What I can proffer is that the union meetings that Deputy King and I have been a part of, they have requested additional stab plates.
No, I've been told that they've requested stab-proof vests,
So if they don't.
not plates.
Okay, I can only let you know what what information I have is that in the meetings, they've requested stab plates also be available to go inside of the ballistic vest because they are two separate vests. A stab vest is different than the ballistic vest. We have asked the vendor for a quote to find out how much is it going to cost for us to purchase stab plates to go into the ballistic vest. How the ballistic vest works is that we are now tracking to go through every agent to see who has an expired vest that has not been replaced. If they are now coming into a 6 to 9 month window towards expiration, we're starting that process earlier and not waiting for the agent to say, Ms. Castine, Mr. King, my vest is expired. We want to be proactive and say we have them scheduled for fitting, we get them fitting, and then they actually receive their new vest prior to the expiration of their current vest. So we're now doing what we've implemented now since we've been on board is better tracking for that. We were not, to my knowledge, we didn't have that mechanism in place. So now we do, so that I can be more proactive and not have my staff out with expired vests with the expectation that they're gonna wave their hand and say, I think my vest is expired. My ownership to them is to make sure that we provide them that replacement vest timely prior to the expiration of the current vest.
And that replacement vest will be stab-proof.
The vests are issued as ballistic vests.
So then you're replacing an expired vest with a non-expired vest that is still not stab-proof.
It's a different vest.
Right, but it is not stab-proof. Will it have a plate in it that is stab-proof?
And I think that's what the deputy was referring to, that we are looking into the plate to put into.
Right, but looking into, and I appreciate the indulgence here because this is and this conversation is very different than the conversation we had earlier. So if I currently have an expired vest and I am getting a replacement or it's close, it's within that 6 to 9 month window of expiration, you're getting me a new vest that is still not stab-proof and you have a quote, you, the agency, have a quote for a potential stab-proof plate. But if I am an agent in the field tomorrow and I currently have an expired vest and I get a new vest on Monday, that new vest is not stab-proof and you have a quote for the stab-proof plate that may or may not materialize into an allocation and then a distribution to agents.
That is the clarity that has been provided to you. Understand that the plate, the reason that they're getting the quote for the plate is because we're still exploring the need for who actually needs to get that. Is it that high level, the person on high level supervision, or is there a need for that low level, the person that supervises the lower level to have that? Or is it based on that individual's comfort, need, and request? We're going to explore all of that. We're still processing this, and we're still learning through this.
So the bottom line is 6 months after Agent Martinez's death, agents still do not have the protection from stabbing in the field. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, do me a favor. I asked earlier about your objective assessments about policies and procedures and everything you're doing, and to keep us in queue on what you're doing. Please add this, and let me just say this. You know, from regardless of what was said at the podium or what was said here, the bottom line is the agency's responsibility is to ensure that every employee has the resources necessary to operate in a safe environment that's conducive and completing their mission, period. That's not up to the individual troop to say, hey, I think my vest is expired. Hey, I think I may want this. The agency needs to make a concerted effort in conjunction with the folks doing the job that this is the next step that we're going to take. You suffered a tremendous tragedy. Let's all learn from this. You either get to the point where you say every person in the field will wear a vest, period, or every person in the field, particularly visiting a high-risk address, will have a body-worn camera. That's up to you. It's up to you. It's not up to the troop. So please ensure that by the time we see you the next time we see you, that is part of your next step.
We will immediately reevaluate that.
Thank you all very much. And if you need any help, you have people who are willing to help. We are your partners.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just briefly, Madam Secretary, we have Aberdeen Proving Ground in Harford County, and so we got to take a road show, I think it was last year, and we actually got to see some of the new vests that are being used for the soldiers that are, you know, dealing with bullets as well as knives and you know, hand-to-hand combat. They're heavy as heck, the ones with the shield as well as the bulletproof. So I'm just thinking that before you spend all this money, I think you ought to make sure that your folks, and I know it's your responsibility, but if they're going to want them and wear them, because they're heavy, and if they have to make these home visits, you know, with let's say in Baltimore City when it's hot as heck and there isn't a lot of shade or air conditioning, I just think that would be my suggestion, because you know, you may say you have to have your vest. Okay, that's one thing. But are they going to do it in the field when it's, you know, 100 degrees out with, you know, 105 heat levels?
And
So,
I
just a
appreciate
thought.
your comment, because through the think tanks, that's some of the things that we did here, that some people just don't want to wear the vest. And then there are others that really want it and, you know, and will wear it. So I appreciate that comment. Thank you so much.
It's heavy. And they said, oh, this is lighter than the old stuff. And I'm like, oh, my goodness. So, no, it's still heavy stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you, Director Bethia. Thank you to our deputy directors for coming here today. And thank you for the members for their patience. We'll now move on to our next panel and bring up representatives from AFSCME Maryland, our partners in labor, Denise Gilmore, Renika Robinson, Mandy Otto.
Good afternoon. My name is Mandy Otto. I'm an executive board member of Local 3661. I'm also a sex offender agent in the Hagerstown office, and I've worked as a parole and probation agent for 8 years. The circumstances surrounding this tragic incident are unfortunately not unique. Exactly 2 weeks before Agent Martinez was murdered, I did a home visit on a sex offender who was on mandatory release and had the condition to not have any contact with children. Parole and probation policy mandates that sex offender agents check the residence for potential victims and children's items. So I went in the residence and almost immediately upon entering the house, I saw an 8-year-old girl coming from a bedroom with a large screen television playing pornography. The second the offender saw that I saw that, the offender was fully aware. As soon as I got back to the office, I was going to request a warrant, and he was going to go back to prison. And at the same time, I was fully aware of how completely vulnerable I was in that situation. Like Agent Martinez, I was alone, without any adequate training or tools or resources to handle this situation. The only training I had received told me not to have confrontations with offenders while out doing home visits. So I left the residence, I went out to the car, I called my office and asked what to do. Management told me to go back into the house and see if there were any other adults there that could take care of the child. So I went back in, and I told the girl, and was told that the girl's adult brother was sleeping in one of the bedrooms. So we woke him up, and he agreed to take care of his little sister. Now, luckily, I was able to leave without incident, but that was just luck. Agents often find themselves in dangerous situations that could turn violent. Agents need more than just leave if there's any confrontation. It's not a surprise that we're going into a dangerous situation. We're going into these people's houses by ourselves, no backup, with a vest and some pepper spray that honestly you can buy off of Amazon for $7.99. To this day, I still haven't been trained on what to do in these circumstances. I couldn't just leave that girl alone with him. Agents should be equipped with the training, tools, and resources to deal with confrontation during home visits. What happened to Agent Martinez could have happened to me just 2 weeks prior. We've been given the wake-up call, and now we have to do something about it. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Good afternoon, senators and delegates. My name is Rainika Robinson, and I am the extremely proud president of ASME Local 3661, which is the local representing community corrections here in Maryland. We thank you for taking the time today to learn about the Division of Parole and Probation and the vital work we do to keep Maryland safe. As a parole and probation agent, I take great pride in my role. I've dedicated myself to helping individuals find a second chance by connecting them with the resources they need to reduce the likelihood of reoffending. However, I am acutely aware of the inherited risks and the dangers that come with the profession. As agents, we rely heavily on our leadership to develop policies and procedures that ensure our safety. From our immediate supervisors to our director, deputy directors, and the secretary of our agency, our safety is entrusted to them from the moment we clock in. On May 31st of 2024, my colleague, Agent Davis Martinez, clocked in at 7:45 a.m. By 7:58 a.m., he notified his supervisor that he would conduct a home visit, planning to leave work by 1:15 p.m. He submitted all of the required documentation, including the address of the residence he was visiting. Unfortunately, it was 592 minutes after Agent Martinez's last contact before law enforcement was notified that he was missing. The home he was visiting was only 8 minutes away from the Silver Spring office. According to the Division of Parole and Probation's General Order 10-003, supervisors are responsible for ensuring that all employees are accounted for during the workday. Yet, despite his timely communication, the agency failed to uphold this responsibility. Agent Martinez was scheduled to leave work by 1:15 p.m. By the time law enforcement was contacted, it had already been 275 minutes since he was supposed to be off duty. Tragically, it was his brother, Michael Martinez, who used his phone to search for him and ultimately notified the department to his whereabouts. In this case, we looked to our leaders for protection, but the very basic task of knowing our agent's location went unfulfilled. The division had a responsibility to monitor our safety, and it failed 592 times. As a local union, we have sent countless emails, participated in numerous meetings, and desperately sought the attention of our leaders, all the way to the top, the Secretary of the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. We have repeatedly requested collaboration to develop policies and procedures that will keep us safe. We have identified the urgent need for better personal protective equipment and have expressed concerns about the equipment currently provided. Our efforts are documented in stacks of emails, meeting minutes, and correspondences, yet the agency continued to refuse collaboration with the union. However, we are cautiously optimistic. With the appointment of our new director and deputy directors, we have begun to engage in meaningful discussions about our concerns. While we appreciate this shift, we have yet to be invited to participate in developing the policies and procedures that directly impact those we represent. We have requested in our monthly meetings critical incident reviews, including the tragic circumstances surrounding Agent Martinez's brutal murder. But these requests have been denied. Moreover, we have yet to hear from our secretary, who has not reached out to Local 3661 to discuss how we can work together to make improvements. It is essential that our leaders collaborate with the union, representing the members affected by their policies and procedures. Listening to our concerns is not just a matter of communication, it is a matter of life and death. The failure to do so has cost us a valued colleague. While we don't have a definitive path forward, we know that collaboration between the union and management is the only way we can create real change. We understand that tough conversations lie ahead regarding the best policies, procedures, practices, and safety equipment. However, we remain hopeful for a clear roadmap to a meaningful collaboration. Thank you.
Good afternoon, delegates and senators. Denise Gilmore, Legislative and Political Director for AFSCME Maryland, Council 3. Thank you for the opportunity to present in front of all of you today. This has been a tough hearing. It's been tough because we obviously mourn the loss of our union brother on behalf of AFSCME Council 3 President Patrick Moran and the AFSCME members that are here. We mourn with, his mother Blanca in the audience and girlfriend Gypsy. He was only 33 years old. He was a loving brother, son, boyfriend, and he was beloved by his colleagues. He loved pandas and actually drew the image that you see on the buttons that we are all wearing here today. This has been a long hearing. More absolutely should have been done to prevent this. Renika, President Robinson knows better than anyone the attempts that were made previously to this incident to address concerns around home visit procedures, around personal protective equipment. It is absolutely true that more resources are needed if it's from making sure that there's a multidisciplinary approach to transitioning, caseloads, having enough warrant apprehension staff when needed. Look, we only have 20 or 30 warrant apprehension officers across the state who are doing their duties statewide. I mean, that, it's baffling to hear that there hasn't been a request made yet for more PINs. We've got agents at this point who are spending a day a week in the office just doing intake and clerical work because we don't have enough agents PINs. It's just dumbfounding. So staffing is absolutely of paramount importance here. But I want to highlight on some of the things that quite frankly don't cost any money that have been really failed here. And that's the collaboration with the elected representatives of these employees. And that's President Robinson, that's Mandy on the executive board. The process, what should have happened here is a serious incident review. And I say this, look, this is coming from OSHA recommendations on workplace violence, on NIOSH, the federal agencies on occupational safety and health. What should have happened here is a serious incident review involving the union. We should have looked at all the circumstances that went into this and come up with, identifying what the risks are, what the hazards are, and then coming up with ways collaboratively. And again, when I say, we bring the expertise of a national union that has health and safety experts that can develop policies state by state. We have here in Maryland an incredible wealth of resources. We have the foremost experts in the country on workplace violence prevention if we want to tap into them. It's 5 months later, and we have not engaged in this level of discussion yet with the department on how we can prevent this from happening in the future. We haven't, you have heard from the department's testimony that we haven't produced a single policy yet that changes things. I want to be clear, those policies need to happen in collaboration with the union, holding think tank sessions, and expecting employees to be as open to you as management as they may be to like a fellow coworker and colleague, and expect to get the same level of discussion and solution solving is just wrong, right? There's a reason why there's a union in place. There's a reason why you go through the elected representatives of that union in a difficult situation like this, because if you want to get down to the heart of it, if you want to have the real conversations on what it's going to take to keep people safe, then you bring the people in together in the room that are going to lead us and get us there. And we're really disappointed that leadership hasn't happened here. Happy to take certainly any questions, but I really want to emphasize that resources are needed. And then as we move forward, we have to have collaboration in developing these policies. We have expertise in this. Mandy and Renika are parole and probation agents. They know this work, right? This is why we have to include their voices in all of this. And we're happy to bring our expertise. We're happy to collaborate. We're cautiously optimistic in collaborating with the new director. We understand that one of the first things she did was reach out to President Robinson. That's encouraging. But now comes time for action. It's been 5 months. We don't want to see 5 more months go by without any action and real tangible changes here. So thank you for the oversight that you're providing. It shouldn't require your intervention. It shouldn't require an oversight hearing like this to start meeting with the employees, but here we are. And so thank you. We appreciate that. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here today. And especially Ms. Otto, thank you for sharing that almost thank goodness that you were safe and you found a resolution to that crisis. Can you just share, quick question, what is your current caseload?
I currently have a sex offender caseload, and I'm supervising about 40 cases.
40 cases. Okay, thank you. And then to President Robinson as well, for both of you, while we have the secretary and her team here, I'll just stick to what I asked them about risk assessment and caseload. From the folks who live this every day, what is your best advice as they reevaluate both of those issues, risk assessment and caseload?
Yeah, so I think when talking about caseloads, I think the only way to really get a real grasp on caseload sizes and what's reasonable, because of course every agency across the country has its own policies and procedures. So we can't necessarily rely on those numbers because our policies might dictate something different. But it's to have a caseload study completed where you study what every agent does every day and you determine how much time they're spending on each task, so that they are able to then develop caseload standards based on actual data and actual Maryland data. And then what was the other?
The risk assessment piece of this equation.
Yeah, so the risk assessment has been kind of a roller coaster. We had an LSIR, which was a really long assessment that placed a lot of our clients into low level of supervision. It was very rare that you had someone over a low moderate. I've had people who have murdered someone come out and been placed on low. So the risk assessments that we do have need some work. We switched to another assessment. I think it's 3 questions long. It's 3 questions. And that in conjunction with another assessment for clients under 30 is what's used to determine a supervision level. What I've seen from monitoring caseloads is that someone on low, I'm writing a report for them sometimes more than I am for someone who's in a higher level of supervision. As agents, right now I don't currently hold a caseload, but when I did have a caseload, I had a general caseload. So I didn't have like sex offenders or domestic violence. But my caseload is a combination of low risk all the way to high risk, and VPI as well. So we definitely need to do work on our risk assessments.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for being here. I have 2 questions. Ms. Otto, first for you, and thank you for sharing that story. And as Senator Elfer said, I'm very glad it had a better outcome. Based on the conversation that we were having earlier with the Secretary and her team, in that instance, would you have been able to request a police officer to come with you in advance if you had wanted?
Well, thank you for asking that question. That's one of the things that I hear from upper management all the time, that, well, you could ask an officer. Every agent is free to ask an officer to come with them. But the fact is, like, unless I don't even know if the MOU in Baltimore City actually works, but most of the agents are out in other areas and there's no partnership agreement, there's no MOU, there's no staff. The local police departments are also overburdened with their work. And so although we could possibly get an officer to go with us, the burden is put onto us to organize that. And so could I personally have done that? I guess, yes, I could have gone to my supervisor, but it would have taken a lot of juggling. And I don't have time for that. I know the other agents don't have time for that. I also know there's another point is that upper management will say, like, just take another agent with you. But we just don't have time for that. It seems like such a luxury that we just never would be able to, like, pull off to do our home visits often.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing the on-the-ground perspective on that. And then, Ms. Gilmore, thank you for being here as well and for your work. Could you give us any thoughts that you all have at this point, and I know it's going to be an ongoing conversation, of actions maybe that this body could be taking when we come back in January?
I appreciate that. I think, look, on the like 5,000 feet level, there are a lot of things that need to change at DPP, and that's going to require collaboration with the union and really getting site-specific on those changes. But at the 30,000 feet level, there's an issue if employees, if unions can consistently kind of push complaints around health and safety, management not take those concerns seriously, and not face any consequences for that. One of the things that we're looking in, that we're very interested in pursuing next session, in honor of Agent Martinez, is looking at the way that occupational safety and health for the public sector is prioritized, period. Many public sector jobs are very dangerous. We're thinking about police officers. We're thinking about, obviously, parole and probation, corrections. I mean, public sector jobs can be very dangerous. And what some other states have done, we're thinking about, for instance, up in New York, they had a similar tragedy where a psychiatric nurse was killed, doing a home visit. What they've done is they've established units within like their occupational safety and health agency to dedicate resources towards occupational safety and health for public employees. We think a workplace violence standard needs to occur. All the standard says is that there needs to be a written plan, right? To me, it is completely unacceptable that agents are facing circumstances in their job. Look, shouldn't come as a surprise that an agent may encounter something in a house visit that could potentially turn violent. That shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. And in that moment, that agent should know what to do and have the resources and tools to deal with it. And so we would very much like to see a written, a requirement that there are written plans for how to eliminate or mitigate these risks, that there are plans to train people on this, right? There should be a workplace standard. And then finally, if the public, if public employers or, departments continue to ignore their obligation, at some point we've got to see if it makes sense that, they're exempted from getting any penalties, right? If a private employer in the state decides to just ignore, a MOSH citation, there are penalties assessed. We don't have a meaningful, enforcement mechanism currently in the public sector here on health and safety enforcement. So we're very interested in hopefully working with this body to correct that.
Thank you, and thank you for, again, raising the concerns on the PPA in particular. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Folden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for coming out today and obviously advocating on behalf of Agent Martinez and the others who still have a mission to do. I have a couple quick questions. One is there an issue with the union with the addition or potential addition of body-worn cameras?
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I was absolutely floored to hear the Secretary say that we've been an impediment to this when we, in fact, have been meeting with them and negotiating way to roll this out. That's all, we wanted. At first, it was unclear, like, where the data for the body cameras were going. Like, we wanted, just to understand that process better. But we've been actively negotiating in corrections, on this. All we ask is the same ability to do that in DPP before,
okay, so in corrections they've talked about, but I'm asking, like, so what I'm hearing you say is that there's been no impediment, by DPP for the issuance of body cameras to be worn on home visits.
All they have to do is meet with us. Let's talk about it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's,
Okay.
you know, we are open to technology. We are open to suggestions on making folks safer, 100%.
So I also heard that the prior administration, that you guys had brought some issues to the prior administration and that some of those issues were being worked on. Have you not had a discussion with the current administration about those same concerns?
Yeah. Renika, you want to take that?
Yeah, so we have had discussions. Actually, on April 23rd, we actually had our first Community Corrections Labor Management Committee meeting. We actually binded 2 books full of information that we provided to the secretary. In these 2 books that we provided her with copies of grievances that we had to file just to get the agency to
I apologize. I don't hear very well, and I can't hear you, and I can't see your mouth.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's okay.
So on April 27th, we had a meeting with the secretary. She was there, as well as a lot of her team. During that meeting, we were able to present her with these 2 books that we had binded. In these books, we had documents. We had a bunch of different grievances we filed to start a health and safety committee, grievances we filed to get health and safety related reports. Some of those grievances we even won at step 1, the one we won on October 12th, which management actually, one of their representatives ruled in our favor in order that they give us the reports and the things that we were asking for. We advised her that as of April 27th of 2023, when we were meeting with her, that we still hadn't received any of those reports. We also provided her with multiple examples of health and safety concerns we believed were mishandled by the department. One in particular is we advised her, and we provided in the book some of the email correspondences between us and the current administration, or the former administration, Director Danner, and former Deputy Director Nolly. In there, that concern was around a sex offender agent who was being harassed by a client. She was getting messages on her state cell phone that said things like, "Baby, you got me so hard." We provided the exact screenshots of those text messages to the secretary, and we informed her that it was over 6 weeks just for our administration to change the phone number of the agent so that she didn't get those messages, and also to move the cases to a different agent. We also provided her with a chain of emails in regards to a caseload subcommittee that our MOU gives us the benefit to form. And we explained to her that it was dangerous the way that the administration was handling caseload sizes, and that we needed them to take it more seriously. On September 13th, we had another meeting with the secretary's office. The secretary wasn't there, but her former secretary of administration, Christina Lentz, was there, and her chief of staff, Anthony Gaskins, he was also there. In there, we actually created a binder. We created a binder to provide them with an update from our last meeting. In that binder, we included email correspondences with former Director Danner. We asked the department to stop district reporting until safety protocols were put in place. And we also asked them if they could provide us with a copy of a safety plan for agents that are performing these duties if they come in contact with a hostile client. We provided this to her team, and we showed her that Director Danner's response was, "No, we're not going to stop district reporting." And she actually told us that we have provided all the information we intend to provide. So we explained to her that we can't even get copies of safety plans for our staff, or we explained to her team. We also provided them with copies of threats made against agents, and cited the lack of response from our leadership team, as well as more emails and more documents just showing our struggle, not only with our health and safety concerns, but the health and safety concern posed by not taking a caseload study seriously. On September 24th, we even sent a follow-up email, and in that email, I actually
a quote from the email. I said, "The union is concerned for the safety of agents in the community." That email was sent to the Director of Labor Relations that works hand in hand with the Secretary, and that's the person who usually sets up our meetings and relays that information. In that email, we begged for another meeting since the Secretary failed to show up to the September 18th meeting. We begged for another meeting and asked him to assist us with scheduling that. On December 4th, I actually forwarded an email to the Secretary. I forwarded directly to her. She did respond and say that she got it and that she would look into it. This email was about loaner vest. We explained that this was an unsafe practice. We actually explained to her that we contacted not only the manufacturer, but the distributor of our vest. We even sent her a copy of the email that was sent from the distributor who makes the vest that we are provided that said it was unsafe to do this practice. The Secretary did not respond to us. She never got back to us like she said in her email, but instead she allowed Director Danner to send us an email essentially stating, "You're going to continue to use those vests." On February 27th, the Secretary again failed to show up to one of our quarterly meetings, but her Chief of Staff, Anthony Gaskins, was there to stand in. And at that point, we did the same thing we have done at every meeting. We cried, we begged, and we pleaded with our administration to help us because we have a problem, and that problem could lead to the serious injury, or in this case, the death of one of our colleagues.
So thank you for those answers. It actually kind of took me into my next question. So I know I guess the director or the acting director brought up policy adjustments. Safety related is the ones I'm going to be concerned about, right? All of us are going to be concerned about those. Have you seen, I just heard a list of attempts by your group to have meetings without the Secretary showing up. And having her Chief of Staff show up is like, doesn't seem to be very beneficial to what we're trying to problem solve here. How many policies, new policies have you received, especially around safety, from this current?
0.
Oh, in 5 months since this incident. I'll just start from this incident. I won't go back to the preceding 18 months that you listed out for me under this administration. So in the 5 months since the most critical incident involving one of DPP's agents being killed in the line of duty without proper supervisory responses, obviously, because there was no policy about checking in on the welfare of their agents, you've seen 0 policies being brought forward to improve safety.
That is correct.
That's concerning. And the after action review, someone mentioned that there was no partnership in that. To your knowledge, was there an after action completed by the agency?
I did receive a copy of a report from IID that was completed into if Agent Martinez acted appropriately to.
So the report was just going to say, was he working within the scope of policy?
Yes, the report pretty much outlines.
Did the report mention any shortcomings or recommendations for improvement for the safety of agents?
No, not that I can remember. Not that I can recall.
And in that report, once it was released, was there ever a discussion had between those representing the agents who were in the line of duty, in the field, and the staff of the Secretary?
No. Every month we have asked, since this incident has happened, we have asked to review the policy, and we have been denied.
Yeah, I just think it's important because I hear Delegate Lewis and his concerns about, having that partnership and that good dialogue, and it is an important facet because the Secretary quite honestly, has no idea what you all do in the field. None. I mean, let's be honest. She's been in the corrections side of the house for a long time, and I commend that service, but she has 0 idea, really, what you all do in the field in the face of the dangers faced. I mean, I've got agents texting me right now about, I was assaulted during a visit with a sex offender where he kicked me in the stomach, and there was an EMT, and because we were trying to EP him, and an officer on the scene, and I was still assaulted. So, okay, my final question then, and I'm sorry, I barely appreciate the indulgence, Mr. Chair. The think tanks that the Secretary has spoken about and others that have gone around the state, what have we seen? What quantifiable responses have we seen or directives given from those think tank sessions to improve the safety of the agents with DPP?
Well, we've been told that there's a nice new policy
No,
coming.
I didn't ask that. I'm saying,
Okay.
what quantifiable, measurable standards in 5 months since Agent Martinez was killed in the line of duty have we seen from the Secretary's office in policy adjustments from these think tanks that involved agents across the state who are the people, boots on the ground, who understand the vulnerabilities that they face about pairs in the home visits, about guns, about vests, about not swapping vests? Because as someone that wears a vest, my vest isn't gonna fit her the same. Because I don't know if you noticed, I'm a little more portly.
Thank you.
So I understand that concern because it is a real concern. What standards have you seen come from those think tank sessions to change and benefit safety for agents?
I will say the things that I have seen is that we were successful in getting the agency to put security guards in our field offices.
Except for 2 of them.
Yes, I think that might actually be correct. Yes. We also have been successful with getting them to stop the home visits. They stopped those right after this incident occurred. We also
But we haven't resumed those.
We have not.
Because the think tank was supposed to be problem solving to get back to those because they're an important element of those higher risk offenders. Agreed?
Agreed.
So can we just stop doing them altogether forever now? Is that what you're saying?
We are told that the agency is working on a policy to get us back in the field. I haven't seen a policy. I don't know what elements they're changing, so I can't speak on that. I haven't been provided with any information on the exact path forward.
Thank you. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Comus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to be real quick. Have you ever thought about possibly, I was very impressed with Mandy Otto going by herself with that person. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, it could have turned very, very badly. So one is to have the agents learn some kind of personal protection. I know I have some cousins that are into Taekwondo, and they could probably kill somebody, and one's like 13 and the other one's like 16. And they won a lot of awards. Now, the other thing that I think would be good is if you could get some kind of seriously looking big guys to go with you when you go on those as a woman, because, you know, it'd be different if you were going to a woman that had an addiction problem, you know, with kids or something, and had no history of violence. But if you're going to somebody that, you know, what you saw, he could have gotten violent with you and done something to you, and that's really scary. So I almost think that the women agents should have the low-level stuff, and if they have somebody that they're, you know, if that's the higher level things, they need a big nasty guardian angel to go with them, I think. And I think that's something that should be explored. And even if you could partner with maybe the military or something that, you know, on the off, they could get some extra money, but they could go with the agents, you know, and not that they carry weapons or anything, but they would just be, you know, kind of, maybe I'm not gonna mess over the female agent. So that's just a thought. It's kind of, you know, it's not the panacea, but it's just another part of trying to fix the problem.
We would have loved to have been able to begin collaborating with management immediately on the safety procedures that need to be acted on and moved. Those are, you know, generic, I think, for whatever agent is going into the field. But unfortunately, again, that hasn't happened. We don't want to waste any more time. We're ready to get to the table and really start hammering out what are the hazards, what are the risks, here's how we deal with those, here are the solutions to mitigate or eliminate those.
Thank you. Senator McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will try to be brief, just a couple questions. So I just want to start off with, I think that the same things that Senator Foden and Delegate Lewis stated with partnership and collaboration are just very important and just signs of leadership in general from that standpoint. And as I listen to both sides of the testimony, I know that there is a meeting of like the LMC that exists. I heard the Secretary say that they were quarterly. I heard, Madam President, I heard you say several dates that kind of had taken place. And I know that this incident happened in the month of May. I heard my colleagues say 5 months from now. So within that quarterly meeting, there should have been at least 2 meetings, possibly 1 to 2 meetings that had taken place from that time. So if you could speak to who's invited to these meetings, because I was concerned when you said in your testimony, Madam President, who represents the workers, I think you said Madam Board Member, who also represents the workers from that standpoint. So at these LMC meetings, who's invited, who has attended, and then also like, is this subject broached when you all are in those discussions? And also, I don't know how many meetings. Has it been 1 or 2?
I appreciate that. I'm going to let, certainly President Robinson talk about the dynamics at the meetings, because admittedly, I'm not at those. But I just, our expectation in a partnership is that when an incident like this occurs, we are immediately meeting to do the policy development together. And unfortunately, that's not what's necessarily happening here. And you heard the Secretary testify on this, by having kind of extra committees that are think tanks, you are circumventing that LMC process, that Labor Management Committee process that we have in our contract, right? When we are instituting new policies that affect working conditions, that is a mandatory subject of bargaining. We should have the ability to discuss what the issue is, what the policy is that needs to be developed, and then how that policy is going to impact agents. And to do it right, both union and management are then leaving that meeting and talking to the workforce about the collaboration and how this is what we're going to do moving forward. I think you're absolutely right. It comes down to leadership, and that's what we hope to see forward. But if you want to get into more dynamics on the LMCs we've had.
Yeah, so the meetings that I spoke about specifically today, those are meetings that are held quarterly, and they're supposed to be with the secretary. It's supposed to include the secretary and then all the leaders of each of our agencies. Community corrections is actually made up of parole and probation, home detention, Maryland Parole Commission, and pretrial release services. So you have leaders in the room from each one of those agencies, as well as representatives from the union from each one of those agencies. So those are supposed to occur on a quarterly basis. The secretary is very busy, so that's why we don't have them, exactly on the quarterly, because it's hard to get on her schedule. As far as, we do also have Labor Management Committee meetings on a DPP level. Those meetings are held monthly. Every 3rd Monday of the month, we sit down with the director, deputy directors, and all the regionals, as well as some other various titles like facility manager, who comes as well. And those are monthly. We also have what's called a Health and Safety Committee meeting. That is also monthly, and that is with various representatives from the union. On that, we have various levels of management, from the lower level management, and I think, and a couple different levels of management. I can't recall each title that sits on that committee. So we actually have a lot of different meetings, and the ideal in a perfect world is that I'm able to escalate my concerns. I can meet at the Health and Safety Committee meeting, take those concerns to the Labor Management Committee, and then if I don't resolve it with DPP leadership, I can then escalate that to the secretary at her meetings, which are the ones that I spoke of today.
Yep. So how many of these LMC meetings have taken place since the recent incident?
We've had 0 with the secretary. We have consistently met with DPP's leadership every month since it has occurred, and we have met with the Health and Safety Committee as well.
Okay. The second question I'm going to move to, and I just want to make sure that the board member, it sounds like you are at these meetings, invited, attend. I'm under the assumption that you were stating that the secretary is invited, and you're saying she didn't attend.
She's attended just the first one, and then at the other ones, when we arrived, we were told she wasn't coming.
The first one after the,
Yeah, so she attended, just to be clear, she attended the meeting on April 27th of 2023. We have not had a meeting with her since then.
I thought the incident happened May 31st.
It did, but,
Okay, okay,
oh, I'm sorry. Since the incident, we have not met with the secretary at all.
okay. And I just want to be clear, are you invited as a board member to these meetings that she's referencing?
I'm invited to the monthly meetings with the DPP leadership, but the secretary does not attend those.
Okay. I'm gonna move my questions, Mr. Chair, if I can. So, Madam Board Member, you talked about the local police force. So I'm in Baltimore City. You referenced Baltimore City a number of times, but I also know that we have a number of state agencies, sworn officers on a state level. So can you speak to like the partnership with the DPP and our sworn officers on a state level? Because you highlighted the local piece of it, and local can partner. And like you said, there are MOUs, but at the end of the day, the state agencies are right under our purview. Yeah, but yeah, I was saying that, like, we have control of that.
I can't talk for, all of the jurisdictions, but in my jurisdiction, I'm more familiar with the local police than with the state police, although there are state police barracks in that area. But I think it goes back to the issue that the onus is put on the agent to coordinate with the police, and we just don't have those types of relationships because we don't interact on a daily basis or weekly or anything.
I got it, and semi-understand, and lifting up that we got, in Baltimore City, we got MTA, we got MDOT, we have a number of folks that are always patrolling or things of that nature within our specific jurisdiction. And those are conversations that we can follow up with the respective state agents. I just wanted to understand because when I heard that the sworn officers will be engaged in these high-risk situations, I thought that that was something new. You were saying that that is something that currently exists already, but I do think that we should be exercising that, especially with a number of the scenarios that we have. I'm not going to belabor our committee. I can ask my questions offline of the respective agency, but I did want to lean in and just say thank you all for your service to our state of Maryland.
Thank you. Senator Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. President Robinson, we've talked about a lot of serious issues today. This is serious. It's less so than the others, but it still was a great concern to me after the incident was the agencies, the department's interaction with your membership, and your membership, particularly in the Silver Spring office, where they offered, this happened on Friday, is that true? Where they offered any type of PTO or any type of mental health support to deal with the fact that their colleague had just been murdered and that they were engaged in the same work and same risk.
Yeah, so the first day when they returned, the Monday, they were all there and expected to work. Our local, actually, myself, the executive board, and a lot of shop stewards, we went to the office and we found agents who were nearly crying on the phone trying to take calls. So we took over at that point and we answered the calls. We went to court. The agency did not have a plan for them that day when they returned. We do know that they did eventually get a plan, have some telework and things like that put in place. And I think CSOSA actually came up to help, but on that initial day, there was nothing in place.
Thank you. And just for the committee, I think it's important that we consider that as a state response to that question moving forward. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions from the senators or delegates here? All right, I want to thank the department. I want to thank our friends at ASME. I'd like to thank the Martinez family for joining us today. We've heard about talking about session coming up in January. My sense is that it might be wise for us to reconvene before session in December, before the holidays, so we can talk about what progress has been made between now and then. And with that, I'll head over to Mr. Chairman.
I just want to echo the second part, well, all of it really, but especially the second part. I do think it's very, very important that we get back together again, and I think certainly I'm going to be asking for us to get back together again before we go back in January, because I think it's very important for both AFSCME and for the department to have open and candid conversations with each other. And I think it's up to us to make sure that that happens before the beginning of session. So I hope that we will all make time to come back together again before January.
This hearing was woefully inadequate, and I think that we can do better when we come back. And when we come back, I really hope that you'll have actually met with the union, the people that represent the workers in your agency. I hope when we come back, you'll have plans for us, actual plans to make sure this doesn't happen again. Hope when we come back, you'll have the numbers that the chairman had asked you for. I hope you'll be able to tell us what pins you're requesting from DPM. And I know you will, because I know you're going to get on it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We're adjourned.